The world watches in horror as the conflict between Israel and Gaza intensifies with devastating consequences for civilians on both sides. The scale of destruction is immense, with entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble and countless lives shattered. Families are torn apart, and the sense of fear and uncertainty is palpable. This latest chapter in a long and bloody conflict began with a surprise attack by Hamas, followed by a swift and brutal Israeli military response. The cycle of violence seems unending, with each side suffering heavy losses and the prospect of peace appearing ever more distant. Now, trapped between militant groups and relentless airstrikes, the people of Gaza face a humanitarian crisis of unimaginable proportions. Hospitals are overwhelmed, essential supplies are dwindling, and the infrastructure is on the brink of collapse. The situation is dire, with many lacking access to basic necessities like clean water, food, and medical care. The death toll continues to climb with each passing day, leaving communities in mourning and emergency services stretched to their limits. The grief is palpable as families bury their loved ones, and the hope for a peaceful resolution seems to fade. The international community grapples with finding a path to peace, holding urgent meetings and peace talks, yet a lasting solution remains elusive. Diplomatic efforts are ongoing, but the complexity of the conflict poses significant challenges. Meanwhile, ordinary people in Gaza struggle simply to survive. Daily life under siege is a constant battle, with families trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy amidst the chaos. Children grow up in war-torn areas, their futures uncertain. This is a story of loss, resilience, and the desperate hope for a better future. Despite the overwhelming odds, the people of Gaza show remarkable strength and unity, supporting each other and rebuilding their lives in the face of adversity. Their resilience is a testament to the human spirit's enduring hope for peace and a brighter tomorrow. As the conflict rages on, a chilling new element has emerged: the fate of hostages taken by Hamas during their initial attack. In a stark message delivered to the world, Hamas leaders issued a grave warning: without a negotiated settlement, the captives will return home in coffins. This chilling statement has ratcheted up tensions, adding a terrifying new dimension to the conflict. Families of the hostages, many of them dual citizens of Israel and other countries, cling to hope, while international pressure mounts on both sides to secure their release. The hostage crisis has become a central issue in the conflict, further complicating the already fraught path to peace. The human cost of this conflict is becoming increasingly unbearable, particularly for the people of Gaza. Trapped in a densely populated area under constant bombardment, civilians are bearing the brunt of the violence. Heartbreaking stories emerge daily: families torn apart, children killed in their homes, and desperate shortages of food, water, and medical supplies. One particularly horrifying incident involved an Israeli airstrike on a queue of people waiting to buy bread outside a shelter in the Jabalia refugee camp. 8 civilians, including children, lost their lives in the attack, highlighting the indiscriminate nature of the violence. The incident sparked international outrage and underscored the urgent need for a ceasefire. Within Israel, the conflict has ignited a firestorm of debate and dissent. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, facing mounting criticism over his handling of the crisis, issued a public apology for the deaths of hostages killed by Hamas. However, his words have done little to quell the anger and frustration of many Israelis. Protests have erupted across the country, with citizens demanding accountability for the government's failures and calling for a swift end to the violence. The hostage crisis in particular has struck a deep chord, exposing the raw emotions and deep divisions within Israeli society. Section 5. A Glimmer of Hope. Biden's ceasefire proposal. As the situation deteriorates, the international community scrambles for a diplomatic solution. U.S. President Joe Biden, deeply concerned by the escalating violence and the plight of hostages, has put forward a take-it-or-leave-it ceasefire proposal to both Israel and Hamas. The proposal, while light on details, represents a glimmer of hope in an otherwise bleak landscape. It remains to be seen whether either side is willing to accept the terms and lay down their arms, but the international community holds its breath, hoping for a breakthrough. Section 6. Global outcry: hostage deaths spark international condemnation. The tragic deaths of 6 hostages, including the American-Israeli Hersh Goldberg Poland, have sent shockwaves through the international community, igniting a firestorm of outrage and sorrow. Governments worldwide have swiftly condemned the brutal killings, demanding justice for the innocent victims and their grieving families. leaders from various nations have issued strong statements, calling for immediate action and accountability. The hostage crisis has become a rallying point for global outrage, further isolating Hamas and increasing pressure on Israel to find a peaceful resolution. Diplomatic efforts are intensifying as the world watches closely, hoping for a breakthrough. Protests have erupted in cities across the globe, from London to Buenos Aires, as people of all backgrounds unite in their condemnation of the violence and their calls for peace. These demonstrations are a powerful testament to the universal desire for an end to the bloodshed. This groundswell of international condemnation reflects the growing sense of urgency surrounding the conflict and the need for a swift and decisive end to the bloodshed. The world is watching, and the pressure is mounting for a resolution that will bring lasting peace and justice to the region. Section 7. Actions speak louder. UK suspends arms sales to Israel. In a significant diplomatic move, the United Kingdom announced the suspension of some arms sales to Israel, citing concerns over the ongoing violence in Gaza. This decision reflects the growing international pressure on Israel to de-escalate the situation and find a peaceful resolution. The suspension of arms sales, while largely symbolic, carries a powerful message. It signals a growing discomfort within the international community with Israel's military actions in Gaza and a desire to see concrete steps taken towards de-escalation and a negotiated settlement. Section 8. Troubled waters. Houthi attacks raise regional tensions. Adding another layer of complexity to the already volatile situation, the conflict has spilled over into neighboring regions. Suspected Houthi rebels, aligned with Iran and engaged in a long-running conflict in Yemen, have launched attacks on ships in the Red Sea. These attacks, while not directly related to the Israel-Gaza conflict, highlight the potential for the violence to spread and further destabilize the region. The international community is watching with growing concern, urging all parties to exercise restraint and avoid actions that could ignite a wider regional conflagration. Section 9. Defiance in the face of pressure. Israel remains committed to its course. Despite mounting international pressure and internal dissent, the Israeli government remains defiant, committed to its military operation in Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu has vowed to maintain Israel's strategic presence on the Gaza-Egypt border and respond forcefully to the hostage killings. This unwavering stance, while understandable given the circumstances, has drawn criticism from some quarters, who argue that it risks further escalating the conflict and hindering efforts to find a peaceful resolution. The situation remains tense, with no clear end in sight to the violence and suffering. Section 10. Voices from the ground. Gazans endure a humanitarian catastrophe. Lost in the geopolitical maneuvering and the diplomatic wrangling are the voices of ordinary people caught in the crossfire. Nowhere is the human cost of this conflict more evident than in Gaza, where the ongoing violence has created a humanitarian catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. Hospitals are overwhelmed with casualties, essential supplies are running dangerously low, and the constant fear of bombardment hangs heavy in the air. Yet amidst the rubble and despair, stories of resilience and hope emerge. Doctors work tirelessly to save lives, teachers strive to provide some semblance of normalcy for their students, and families share what little food and water they have. Section 11. A fragile future. The urgent need for peace and reconciliation. As the sun rises over the Mediterranean Sea, casting a serene glow over the peaceful coastline of Gaza, we are reminded of the beauty and potential that lies within this troubled region. The path forward in this seemingly intractable conflict remains unclear. The streets of Gaza, marked by military presence and damaged buildings, tell a story of a region caught in a cycle of violence and despair. The violence continues, fueled by decades of mistrust, anger, and pain. Protest scenes and clashes between Israeli forces and Palestinians are a stark reminder of the deep-seated animosities that persist. The aftermath of bombings leaves a trail of destruction and heartache. Yet, even in the darkest of times, the hope for peace flickers. Children play amidst the ruins and people rebuild their homes, embodying resilience and a yearning for a better future. The hopeful faces in Gaza, despite the ongoing conflict, are a testament to the human spirit's endurance. The international community must redouble its efforts to broker a lasting ceasefire, bringing together diplomats and leaders to engage in meaningful dialogue. The United Nations and other international bodies play a crucial role in facilitating these discussions, address the root causes of the conflict, such as historical grievances, economic disparities, and political injustices. Humanitarian aid and rebuilding efforts are essential, but they must be accompanied by a genuine commitment to addressing these underlying issues, and work towards a future where Israelis and Palestinians can live side by side in peace and security. There are glimpses of peaceful coexistence in mixed communities where daily life continues despite the broader conflict. The road ahead will be long and arduous, requiring difficult compromises from all sides. Peace negotiations are fraught with challenges, and the debates are often intense. Yet the voices of those protesting for peace remind us of the collective desire for an end to the violence. But the alternative, continued bloodshed and suffering, is simply unacceptable. The aftermath of conflict, with injured civilians and scenes of mourning, underscores the urgent need for a resolution. The world watches and waits, hoping that this latest chapter in the Israel-Gaza conflict will finally be the one that leads to a just and lasting peace. Global protests and extensive news coverage highlight the international community's vested interest in seeing an end to the suffering and the beginning of a new era of peace and reconciliation.